Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the day one update for the Avalanche Shaman starter that I decided to play this patch. And let me tell you, Avalanche is a beast. Ooh, Zooey Mama is Avalanche really good. With the new changes, essentially, it has made it so that Avalanche went from a just terrible skill to absolutely like all the way up there, like one of the best cycle starts I've ever had, just in terms of the damage, the survivability, just everything involved. It's been amazing, right? So essentially, if you don't know, Avalanche was changed so that it was now a non-channeled skill to begin with, and it has a lot more damage effectiveness, all the way to 4,800% damage effectiveness per click, but it does cost 50 mana per click, so it is kind of balanced also as well. You don't always hit with every single boulder without AoE scaling, which I plan on doing eventually, but overall, Avalanche has been great. The new Shaman, everything has been great. Some of the things that I've done with the build that's different from the first video is the adoption of fonts of the erased again. So if you don't know, with the way that my build works is I'm getting all these storm stacks to hit with, and I'm getting all these boulders to hit with, and I have all this extra flat mana. What's happening now is whenever I take a hit, when I'm actually placing down boulders, I am gaining my, missing health gained as ward instantly, because as you know, with a font of the erase, you gain ward on hit based on your missing mana, based on your, and then up to your missing like life. And of course, if I take a hit, I'm like, bam, instantly back up to like my max quote unquote life threshold. So the main way of fixing our survivability now is by just stacking as much life as possible to let the fonts do their job. Because as you can see, whenever I take any hit, I'm like instantly back up, which is great. So that's been doing well. Another thing I want to mention, a lot of people have been asking me about Spriggan Form on stream. Why am I using it? Well, let me give you an explanation, since apparently I didn't make one in the first video, which I did, but people are pretending I didn't. So Spriggan Form is there to sustain our mana. We stack max mana so that we can cast a very large amount of avalanches in a row, which is a lot of damage, and then we turn into Spriggan Form to give us all of our mana back. Because if you don't know, if we transform, we turn back into Spriggan, we gain all of our mana back, and then we wait a few seconds. Now, this kind of like loop, it gets a lot better as you have cooldown recovery speed and the more mana. Early on, it is a little painful, very tinge painful, but as soon as you start getting to like 500-ish mana, the pain pretty much goes away, and you start realizing that Spriggan Form is actually insane for what we're doing, mainly because not only does it give us access to Thorn Shields for the massive defensive boost, it also it also gives us a nice chunk of ward whenever we turn into Spriggan Form, giving us a nice defensive layer, and also of course gives us all our mana. People keep asking me, can I play this build without Spriggan Form? No, you cannot. You cannot play this build without Spriggan Form. If you want to play without Spriggan Form, I would suggest playing a different skill. I would not suggest playing Avalanche. You would need an insane amount of mana to sustain the same amount of boulders that I'm spewing out right now. So if you don't like Spriggan Form, then you're kind of out of luck. Sorry, sadly. Another question I've been getting a lot of is about Storm Totem. So Storm Totem is the Shaman's Mastery skill. You get it when you finish the Mastery mission, which is around usually when you get to level 15 in the campaign. But I was speed running when I was trying to play my when I was doing my cycle start practice with the planners in the description of the last video, and I got to my mastery at level 11, which is 4 levels under than when you normally average get under it. And people are like, well, how do I put Storm Totem on my bar? Well, it's because it's a mastery skill. You have to unlock your mastery to get your mastery skill. It's amazing how basic info like that isn't really like understood. I'm actually kind of surprised that like it was such a large disconnect between, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it. I streamed for 25 hours. I got to around 300 corruption 10 times in a row, or 9 times. I've killed 9 out of 10 of my Harbingers. I was second and third on the Shaman the Primalist leveling leaderboard the whole time. I'm like level 94 now, and I'm still like number 7 even after taking a nap. So like we're doing great in terms of leveling. Apparently with the leveling leaderboards, it's actually kind of cool. I had to have someone actually point out to me that I was actually competing for like the #1 shaman at the time. I was just like, wait, you mean like I'm actually going fast? Holy crap, I felt like I was going slow. But yeah, Avalanche Shaman, amazing starter. You do have to get used to the Spriggan form stuff, but like, I'll be honest, man. Like, the Spriggan stuff is nowhere near different than the focus stuff that's going on with Mage. I don't know. It's such a huge disconnect for me from playing Last Epoch for so long to have someone complain about Spriggan form. I'm like, what? Like, what else are you going to do to sustain all that mana? Are you going to build mana regen? You can only get around like 40 to 50 per second. Avalanche costs at most at least 40 mana, which means to sustain the amount of casts that I'm currently doing with a mana regen setup, you would have to essentially like you would have to have a very large amount of mana regen. You'd have to have like 150 mana regen, just to give you an idea. Okay, when I turn on Spriggan form and it's a 6-second timer, I have 600 mana. When I press Spriggan form and I sit in it for 6 seconds, I am effectively gaining 100 mana per second to sustain my boulder output, right? Like, that's crazy. But yeah, I like this patch. This patch has been great so far. I've been enjoying it. The Harbingers are really fun. The Envy one is really bad for our build. The Envy is actually the worst Harbinger ever for our build. That is because he does this little dash where he does like the red attack. And the problem is he dashes just outside of our boulder spam range, which makes the fight last significantly longer than it should. But to give you an idea, I'm going to show some footage of like an Oribus that I had from last stream. To give you an idea of the difference of difficulty that we've had between the Harbingers and, of course, the actual content, like the monolith bosses and stuff. It is night and day difference. EHG is really pushing up the difficulty of these new bosses, which I'm all for, by the way. Like, I'm all for the bosses to be difficult, but definitely the Envy one is by far the worst one for a build because he just does a bunch of running around. But thankfully, even like as he's running around, we can just burst down one of his HP bars and then wait for the boss word to subside while he's like doing all his like little fun dashes and stuff. And oh my goodness, we do have the damage. Like I think this is some of the most damage I've ever had for such an early starter, especially if you ignore stuff like Falconer and stuff like that, which, by the way, did win the race, the softcore race for Aberoth or whatever. That's because Falconer, if you don't know, is probably one of the most overpowered things to ever exist in Last Epoch, but that's a topic for a different day. But yeah, I got to 8 out of 10 Harbingers. How do I feel about it? I'm mixed. I think the problem is the Harbinger system is really cool and I love interacting with it, and actually having bosses that don't fall over is great. The problem is I had to essentially push to 300 corruption 10 times in a row. That was mind-numbing, I will say. On stream, like I said, I spent 25 hours. Most of that was me running through monos trying to get my corruption so I could fight the next Harbinger. It was an experience. I have my own thoughts about that I'll be talking about in the future, but I'm going to be leaving down planners in the description for my build currently, for my snapshot of my build. I'm going to leave down a new description of how I leveled the character. I'm going to make like a quick leveling planner for you guys. I'm also going to leave down my loot filter, but just so you know, do not use this loot filter till level 40. It is not a leveling filter. I don't use filters while leveling, so keep that in mind. I've had a few people complain to me that like, oh, like I'm using your loot filter and I don't see anything. I'm like, well, yeah, you're like level 20. Of course you're not seeing anything. My filters aren't meant for level 20. Just stop trying to use it for leveling. You don't need a filter for leveling. It's not Path of Exile. You don't drop enough items to merit that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We're gonna be streaming again today. Like I said, I stream for 25 hours, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break, but once I get back, I will be streaming more. I have way more content to come. I need to work on my build a lot more. I have a lot of stuff I got to work on. So with all that being said, I think this has been Dread. Off to go in game and talk about the build more in detail real quick. All right, so here we are in game with the character. Let's go over it real quick how I normally go through. So for the skills, I haven't changed Avalanche all that much. It's the same idea. People are asking me, Dread, why is my Avalanche physical? It is mainly, first things off, to go for cold, right? And to grab all these cold nodes and to get this hit damage as well. It takes a significant portion of points to do so, while taking the Fizz route with the Storm stacks is significantly easier to do so. And we also gain access to Gathering Storm. Gathering Storm not only gives us a lot of stun chance, as you can see here, it also gives us access to more Maelstroms. And the more Maelstroms is important because it also gives us more global physical damage per Maelstrom stack. I'm usually sitting around 20, so this is a 20% more damage multiplier, which makes up for the 20% that we're missing from this one. Now, another interesting thing as well is not only does it give us access to a little bit of dodge rating technically, it also gives us a very large amount of stun chance. As you can see here, we're getting a global 24% per, and at 20 stacks is around 400% stun chance. And then over here, we are getting around 300% stun chance. So I have 1,000% stun chance for my boulders without even investing. And it's really good being able to stun lock most enemies. All the nemesises I go up against, they're all perma stun locked right now. 300 corruption, everything is perma stun locked. The only thing that isn't perma stun locked right now is like Harbingers, and that's because they have a lot more health and a lot more tolerableness, right? So yeah, overall, this character has been going great. Let's talk about the other skills. Warcry is the same stereotypical setup, grabbing the 200% crit chance, getting the Maelstroms, that's pretty much it. Spriggan form, just doing the Thorn Shield stuff. The reason why this is so strong, why we're grabbing this, is because if you don't know, in Druid form, we're grabbing Thicket of Thorns. It makes it so that we have a chance to cast Thorn Shield whenever we're hit. This gives us a very large amount of armor very quickly. Now, I think if I'm going to keep fighting these Harbingers, I'm actually going to be dumping these nodes. And that is because with the Harbingers specifically, they don't hit you that much. They just do a bunch of damage. So this is actually not worth it if we're fighting bosses constantly. But when we're doing monoliths, this is really good. So like, you know, obviously. Other things that I've changed. So gearing, like I said, we're running double Font of the Erase. So Font is giving me on average like 20 ward on hit per ring. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but every boulder click we do is about 10 to 11 boulders. So that's like about 220 ward per boulder click. And like I said, as we lose life, we gain it instantly back. It's like having Vault Pact all over again, to give you an idea of how it feels. So just having all this extra ward on hit means that whenever we take damage, we are instantly back up. Now, to abuse this fact, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be leaning out of the peak of the mountain. We're going to be going out of health regen. I thought we're going to go into health regen, but we're actually going out of health regen, I believe, currently. And we're going to be going for a bleeding heart, and we're also going to be scaling the healing from Maelstrom as well. Right now we're getting 120 healing per second, but we're going to actually bump that up with a little bit of healing effectiveness. The reason for that being is I want to scale to like maybe 6 to 7k health, and to do that I'm going to need a lot of sustain. And of course, like I said, with the fonts, I'm going to be able to like sustain that HP by just gaining a bunch of ward on hit as well. So by the time like I take a hit, what happens is I'll gain like maybe like 2k ward instantly, and then I'll be leeching my life back to full. Then I'll have like decent EHP. I don't even have any much ward retention. You don't need ward retention. The idea is to just literally use this as a buffer, as a way to sustain yourself much easier. Also, as well, it has percent health and mana on it, so they're not even that bad of items overall. Other changes I made. Right now, I'm just using a pair of movement speed boots I found from the League Mechanic, but technically you should be running something with like HP on it. But I'm currently running Fiery Dragon Shoes movement speed. Obviously, a lot of my character right now is not refined. I have like a shitty pair of gloves I got from Nemesis, right? I got a shitty relic. I have a shitty chest piece. Like I need to refine this build significantly because I want to be able to take on Aberoth, and to do so, I need to be ready for it, and I need to have better gear for it because it is a stat check. Let me tell you, it is a stat check. So like we're going to go through, we're going to actually update all my gear. The planers will be down in the description as well. Like, I didn't change much from the original planner, but we're going to be making drastic changes to this build next time around to make it more functional for the Harbinger fights, because the difficulty on them are significantly higher than the content that we've had access to, which means Dread just needs to start theory crafting more abusive ways of playing the video game. But yeah, with all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go do something else. Bye.